All right, welcome to ATW Live Monday. What is today's date? The 11th of
Yes.
November, after the election. How are you doing, Walter?
I'm doing well, except I got a handwritten note today from one of ATW's big fans, John Griffin of Charlotte, North Carolina. He said, just a note to thank you for your excellent commentary. Our country needs you and Matt Taibbi's commentary. So this is both a thank you note and also to ask you politely to quit vaping, please. So what has been my shtick on this show, the hungry vaping that you see me doing while Matt's speaking, is going to go the way of the,
Oh, come on now. That's a kindly recommendation, probably meant to try to keep you alive a little bit longer. But you don't have to give up something that makes you happy, Walter.
I might be tongue tied without it. We'll see. I'm going to go as long as I can in this show, and then when you see me grab like a baby for its nookie, you'll know that's the end of my willpower. So
plus that's just because they can see your bad habits, but they can't see mine. So
right.
yeah,
And they don't have to look at their own when they're pointing fingers at me.
That's right. That's right.
As they sit there with a big crack rock listening to ATW.
Remember that Chappelle episode where the guy had the crack rock that was the size of a medicine ball, and that was like the greatest episode ever.
Yeah.
All right, so Trump won the election. Obviously, we've been on the air a few times since then, and I guess we thought we'd be out of like Schadenfreude mode by now.
But they won't let us.
They won't let us, really.
They won't let.
Yeah.
They keep providing material for us to shoot at. They keep sending up balloons saying, it really is Hitler time.
We were joking just before the show started about how Walter, what was your thesis? Basically,
what the media proved is that the sum total of all its force across all the corporate platforms, including all the universities and the experts associated with them, and the massed bureaucracy of the federal government, could not stop Hitler if they wanted to. So we now know that should a non-imaginary Hitler arise, America will be powerless to do anything about it. And that's good to know.
Especially when you consider that they marshaled every conceivable informational, legal, law enforcement, every kind of leverage they could possibly have deployed, short of shooting the guy. Although they may have even done that. Who knows? We can't rule that out.
Including tattletale generals. Apparently, generals just don't have the pull that they used to.
That's right. I keep forgetting that they put out that list with the 1,043 national security leaders and 200 and something admirals and generals. Well, and John Kelly, obviously, right, talking to the Atlantic.
The Atlantic, which I have retitled The Atlantis, because the Atlantis magazine has now sunk below the oceans and is going to be searched for by future historians.
That'll be great. There'll be an archaeological expedition to find the Atlantic. Well, let's see what's on the cover page of the Atlantic right now. Let's take a look. I'm sorry, it's already funny. Here we go. But while I'm queuing this up, and by the way, folks, we are down a mystery producer tonight due to an aggressive virus, which I thought maybe she was faking, but it is not, clearly. Right. Yeah, my thought on that whole effort was, like, the metaphor for me is like, if you launched the Normandy invasion and ended up in Ireland somehow, right? Like, if you retreated, like, it'd be one thing if they didn't actually land on the beach, but to make it go backwards is kind of an amazing thing. Okay, so this is the Atlantic right now, and the world is upside down. The Democrats sent a
the Atlantic's world is upside down. They just lost the House too. I saw before we got on the air.
Did they really?
I mean, the Republicans retained it.
The Republicans retained it. I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this stuff is so funny. The Democrats need an honest conversation on gender identity. You think? I mean, come on. Like, what the fuck? These people.
What was it? A dishonest conversation that they were having before?
I mean, they just thought that. I mean, I don't even know what they were thinking. It's going to be so interesting to dissect. Go back and dissect some of the what the quote unquote thought leaders of this era was going through, what was going through their heads during this time, because they clearly weren't trying to win votes in a traditional sense, right? They just thought they could, I guess, win a certain amount without having to.
Matt, the more I see about the Harris campaign spending, their $1 billion budget, which landed 20 million in the hole, it seems, with payments like $1 million to Oprah. You'd thought that she would have gotten to that point in her life when she would have stopped Hitler for free, being a billionaire and everything. But
I'm sorry. It is funny, that you need to charge to stop Hitler.
But my favorite is, and if this is wrong, then just put it under Walter got fooled. But apparently she spent $10 million on Beyonce, who didn't even sing.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that whole thing. But they got to announce that she was going to be there.
Right.
But $10 million.
But my suspicious mind says that was $10 million for, that party we were both at? You're never going to say I was there. Here's $10 million. You don't have to sing.
What thing could they have gotten into at that party that would be so unspeakable that it would be worth that kind of transaction? We can't speculate on things like that.
No, we really can't. But yeah. I'm sure if there's anything to speculate on, I have a feeling we're going to find out, because these people are throwing down now. I mean, that border czar that Trump appointed looks like he was born under a manhole cover in Chicago. America's bouncer, Tom Homans.
Yeah, he's gonna do face control. Yeah, you too old for the club, not for like the earth, but for the club. All right. So before we get into all the crazy ass election review stuff, and there's an awesome quantity of it, so there's no way we're gonna be able to get to all of it, and we'll do our usual duckins and everything. But there's one thing that did transpire today that sort of brought us back to the good old days of being genuinely frightened. And I think we gotta pay a little bit of attention to this one, because it was a little ominous. Because
game theory says fight back when struck.
Right. So this is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This video came out on the Wokeness site. It was in 14-second form. I think this is an IG conversation, actually, and I tried to find a longer version of it, but this is as much of it as I could get. But basically, it's her sort of trying to engage with Trump voters, and she asked this. Whoops, sorry.
So serious. I'm meeting you where you're at. I'm not trying to be defensive about it. Which podcasts are you listening to? Which accounts are you subscribing to? I'm interested, like genuinely. Let me know which ones specifically, which accounts, which podcasts, etc. Okay.
So
Get,
Walter,
to that I say, get a warrant.
yeah,
I'm just curious. Could you give the names, the
yeah,
addresses, and the phone numbers of any influencers who you might have found persuasive?
the exact URLs,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
I mean, come on. Come
Right?
on. She just wanted to show that she's shameless and that they're on the case, you know. That was meant to make me go,
Well, no, I mean, definitely that sent me straight to Puckerland, that little clip. And it's not like CIS has been disbanded.
no.
You know, the Department of Homeland Security and its 10 billion employees, or however many people work there, they're still all there. And
She said she's meeting Trump supporters where they live without defensiveness. No, but with offensiveness, I'd say.
yeah, exactly.
And how many Trump supporters are on her Instagram or whatever? I mean, this was signaling her own constituency that she's going to take names. Show me your papers.
Yeah, and they're gonna make a list. And look, the argument, the thing that we saw from the beginning, we started taking up this issue of well, we're not going to use these words anymore, the MDM words, right?
Right.
From the moment we started taking up those issues, the thing that made us most nervous was this sort of stochastic terrorism conception of information, where
Right.
it's basically you're guilty by association. You know, the DHS had, I'm sorry, it wasn't DHS, it was GEC had that information ecosystem concept where you know, even if you had no contact with the bad foreign actor, if you were too in sync with their point of view, then you were part of the ecosystem, and then you were sort of stochastically responsible for whatever the bad act was. And you know, if there are clearly people who are thinking that we've heard plenty of calls for regulating the digital landscape in the last 5 or 6 days. So that was scary.
I mean, can you believe it? They are shameless and absolutely frightening in their insistence that the only reason people vote is because evil influencers make them. This time, they're not blaming Putin ultimately, or maybe they are. I haven't paid enough attention, but you know, she has the #1 podcast right there in her head, Joe Rogan.
Oh, I know.
What's going to happen to Joe?
Well, Joe's already marked for some kind of punishment, and what's funny is that he's already survived like 98 cancellation attempts.
Right.
But they're going to keep trying.
If Neil Young can't stop him, I don't think AOC can.
How amusing did you find the whole call for we have to find a feminist Joe Rogan?
Well, it reminds me of the old days when they had to find a liberal counterpart to Rush Limbaugh. And who did they try? I forget.
You're seriously asking because it really ended up with Rachel.
Yeah, well, right. There were a few attempts though on radio to get a counterpart to Rush Limbaugh, and they all failed spectacularly. Well, and then Rush left early, and they managed to prevail in the 2020 election, but apparently wrongthink grew back on Apple Podcasts, and
right, yeah. So they're going to have to do something about it. They're just going to have to shut it all off. I think.
Right.
You know, big accounts, small accounts. Al Franken was one of them. That's right. Another one was Sam Cedar. Janine Garofalo was on there.
I think Sam Harris also has come out. with this thesis. It's funny. She was willing to go on Rogan. She just wanted him to come to her, which he doesn't do. But I guess if she had, they wouldn't be able to make this argument.
I mean, I don't know how you can debate that it was a colossal error not to go on Joe's show.
Oh, absolutely.
Is there any? What's the argument for it? Apart from the idea that if she had gone on for 3 hours, that she would have collapsed into component elements and made an even bigger shit show of things. There's no real argument, right? Is there?
No, except perhaps that they wanted to have a clean slate for blaming them afterward, which is far-fetched and of course probably not true, but it allows them to more cleanly blame that podcast sphere. But I was prepared as of today to start letting down the Schadenfreude and letting down the cackling, but I'm not. But now with this, I'm not at all. I mean, I need these people to be safely out of power now.
Oh, I know. Yeah, no. This is as I put on my site the other night. It reminds me of Army of Darkness. There's that scene where they think that somebody thinks that they've killed like the zombie and goes to reach for its arm, and the hero of the story is like, "Don't! It's a trick. Get an axe." Because it's just playing dead.
But that AOC performance was an exact reproduction of the snake fable that Donald Trump loves to tell about how the snake gives the mouse a ride across the river, sort of, in the same way that AOC said, "Hey, I'm meeting you where you live. Just give me the list of people and places." And then, of course, they all go down. And she said, "What did you think? I was always AOC."
Right. Yeah. That's right. It's the old Aesop frog and the scorpion thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. We can take these in any order you want, but I just, in somewhat of a petty way, I just wanted to remind everybody. For instance, Bret Stephens said 2 years ago, on November 17th, after the midterms, Donald Trump is finally finished.
Finally finished.
Yeah. Yes. And there's like 10 million of these. If you go back, I was staggered by how many different types of media treatments there were along these lines, how many different angles they came at this theme from.
So this is interesting because at the time they started writing these, Trump will never return. I thought, this guy wrote The Art of the Comeback. You are absolutely playing into his prescripted storyline by banishing him. He's, Napoleon comes back from, his island,
Elba
exile.
Right.
Caesar comes back from, beyond the Rubicon. Have you ever not seen a narrative of comeback that doesn't involve a period of exile? Why did they hand it to him? Do they not read? And they don't. They have no sense of drama. And that was what was interesting about this campaign to me, is that they thought they could overcome this return of the hero narrative with nothing. You need a comparable archetypal narrative, and they never came up with one.
Well, they came up with narratives, but they were sort of comically ridiculous.
They weren't deep in our literature and in our lizard brains as humans.
Right.
They were superficial.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to be too petty about this, but just to go back and way back in time, this is Keith Olbermann in November of 2017 pronouncing his work done, because Trump is finally finished.
If only it were so.
And it's as funny as you'd expect. Hang on a minute.
I'm Keith Olbermann, and this is The Resistance. I am confident now, even more so than I have been throughout the last year, that this nightmare presidency of Donald John Trump will end prematurely and end soon. And I am thus also confident that this is the correct moment to end this series of commentaries. The important stuff first. There are 7 routes in front of Trump. Each inevitably ends in his impeachment or resignation. The first, the likeliest, became 1,000 times more likely with the Thanksgiving news of a possible deal between Robert Mueller and General Michael Flynn. As I reported here as long ago as April 4th, the most specifically qualified expert alive on the subject of prosecuting a president, my friend, the Nixon White House counsel John Dean, put it to me very simply. Mueller is not shooting down. Mueller does not make a deal with Flynn to get Paul Manafort. He does not make a deal with Flynn to get Jared Kushner.
All right. We get it.
First of all, was he incarcerated at that time? Because that has to be the most haphazard set I have ever seen. I mean, it literally looks like he's broadcasting from solitary confinement.
It is pretty funny. It's got a little bit of a Play-Doh kind of a look. I mean, I should talk. Look, I'm in the porn / magic shop back room. So, but look, just to remind everybody where everybody's head was at in November of 2017, like that they could actually think like this, and then to move ahead to let's skip past 9 billion things that happened and whole forests massacred,
and the entire line of It's Mueller Time merchandise.
Oh my God, the votive candles, all that stuff, the praying, and what's so interesting about this phenomenon? There were many moments, and they're still going on, in which people had religious reactions to either to news of Trump's demise or to news that he had arisen Phoenix like from the ashes to haunt them again. That's the wrong metaphor, right? Because you don't arise from the ashes to do something bad, do you? I don't know. I need a different metaphor.
Well,
help me out, folks.
A vampire can sort of reassemble, I suppose, from partial death to re-biting people. But Matt, there was one I'm looking for here when Nate Silver gave us his wisdom. To me, the fact that Nate Silver will probably rise from the ashes no matter what is one of the most astonishing things. He's done it 17 times already.
Oh, you mean the recent one, the one that you sent me this morning? Hang on a second.
Yeah, I mean he gave a whole list of.
Let me see if I can find it. Hang on, where is it? Sorry, folks. While I'm looking for that, let me just play this other one. This is a 2022 after the midterms compilation. Hang on a second.
What I can tell you is the biggest loser tonight is Donald Trump.
Donald Trump was the big loser.
This man is a loser.
He's the biggest loser in American politics.
The big losers are going to be Donald Trump.
Trump is not a national winner.
This is a resounding loss for him.
Well, not only is Donald Trump the loser, we already heard John Carl say that Donald Trump was the biggest loser of the night. Do you agree?
Oh, there's no question.
Trump was the
biggest loser tonight.
The biggest loser last night was Donald Trump.
Trump was the biggest loser.
What I can tell you is the biggest loser tonight is Donald Trump.
Donald Trump was the biggest loser of the night.
He's the biggest loser in American politics. Donald Trump's not going to like this.
The biggest loser last night was Donald Trump.
It just goes on and on.
What night are they talking about? The debate?
This is after the midterms in 2020.
Right. Well. Here's Nate Silver on September 10th.
We'll see. I find it. You sent this to me, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm reading it, so don't doubt its accuracy. We'll see where the model is in 2 weeks. Nate Silver always starts with a proviso. I may be completely wrong, but let me tell you with certainty what I think. We'll see where the model is in 2 weeks, but 4 huge mistakes for the Trump campaign so far. 1, Vance. 2, meandering convention speech, blowing moment of goodwill. 3, not prepared for Harris swap. 4, clearly not prepped well for tonight's debate and or incapable of sustained A game. So I'll go through what Walter thought of each of these. One, Vance, brilliant pick. Probably for me, the turning point of the campaign, not that they were ever really behind because we weren't being told the truth, was the vice presidential debate in which Tim Walz came out looking like, a jack-o'-lantern that had been permanently carved in a scared expression. And the meandering convention speech, Matt, we were there for, and seeing that the guy had just been, shot in the head, the ear at least, a few days before, I was willing to forgive meandering. I was like, this guy's back in front of his crowd and he doesn't want to leave. I remember saying that night, it's like somebody who got a very bad scare and doesn't want to go to bed alone. And I thought it was actually very human. Not prepared for Harris swap. I think he was prepared for Harris swap from before he went into that debate, because any sentient being could have told you that given Biden's state at the time, he was probably going to wipe his butt. And there had already been talk, we're learning, of Biden dropping out. So, maybe he wasn't prepared for Harris being the swappy, but I think he was pretty prepared for them to get rid of him. And 4, clearly not prepped well for tonight's debate. Well, we watched that debate. We did a live stream, and it was my opinion at the time that the predictions of Trump's demise immediately afterward were really overblown. It was not, to me, an impressive debate for Americans who were worried about what Harris might do. As a beauty contest, it might have not gone well for Trump, but as a comparison of 2 substantive platforms, he seemed like he was worried about the country, and she seemed like she was getting her acting class in on stage. So, but Nate, I don't know where the model was in 2 weeks from then. He probably revised it, but he really was the chief op in terms of keeping America on the edge of its seat for a election that really wasn't all that close.
Yeah, it wasn't that close. It was,
well, she only lost every single swing state.
Right. That's right.
And the Senate and the House. Remember all that conventional wisdom back when, well, they don't really think they're going to win, but they want to get the House. Well, they didn't get that either. So how this can be portrayed as anything else than a wipeout, I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's some really funny stuff about that, actually, which I will dig up in a second. Did you see number 5 though that he had there? He added an arguably at the end.
And accepting the early Biden debate was a huge mistake too. It proved probably to be the masterstroke, frankly.
Right.
I mean, hindsight is 20/20, but foresight in Nate Silver's case is 10/5.
I mean, a lot of people who can't predict things, who have problems predicting things that have already happened, and I don't know, this whole thing with I almost feel bad for Nate because he worked hard. He was kind of like canceled for kind of stupid reasons and clawed his way back up to being a listen to figure again, and then only to have exactly the same thing happened.
But let's examine for a second Nate's method. I take all the conventional wisdom and I glob it all together in a conventional wisdom loaf, sort of like pimento loaf, and then I take a slice from the middle of it, and then I add my own conventional wisdom, and I'm always wrong, but there is a beauty to my method that suggests someday I won't be.
Right. There's like a magic. There's a magic ingredient which isn't just a gut feeling. Even though
the so-called secret sauce. Remember
the secret sauce, right? And remember, I like the failures in 2016 were so amazing, right? Because there was that whole thing about how Trump will play in the NBA before he's the nominee. There was a whole thing about how he's not even going to make it to the nomination, and while he was massacring everybody in the polls, and that was just outright departing from the whole discipline of data journalism. They just didn't want it to happen, or they didn't think it could happen, so they just chose to disbelieve the data, and I guess they're just doing it again, or they just continue doing it. So
right.
But you mentioned that conventional wisdom about how impossible certain scenarios were. This is John Heilemann, who, by the way, managed to get back on Bill Maher over the weekend, despite mispredicting basically everything for I don't know, the last 20 years or so. But here he is back in last year. This is during the primary season.
Candidate. And Joe, this is the thing. He is there's no Republican who's paid attention to his run in 16, his run in 20, and the Republican performance in the midterms around those years that doesn't know what baggage Donald Trump has and what the baggage is, as you just said, that he can't shed. There are voters he'll never get. There are places he'll never be competitive. And there's so many of them now that there's no world in which Donald Trump no imaginable world in which Donald Trump could ever win a popular majority in America, in the American electorate. And the narrow needle that he needs to thread in the Electoral College has gotten narrower and narrower to the point where Trump he is a powerhouse within the Republican Party still. And yet on the national level, running a head-to-head presidential contest, a general election, he's getting close to, not unelectable yet, but he's the deficits he carries into that race are so huge and so well known and specified that if the Republican Party were a rational body with a single mind, there's no world in which he would be the nominee. But that, of course, is not the way our politics work. And
anyway, you get the idea.
But Matt, I think we're obliged to theorize about how you can be so vociferously, adamantly, continually wrong. And it's either that you're not telling the truth because there's some penalty for predicting success for Donald Trump, or at least the possibility of it. That could be. Number two, their bubble is now an igloo. It has thick ice walls, and they're trapped inside it, and they really can't see it beyond it. Or three, they're as stupid as they look. I mean, because only stupid people give themselves no way out and say things like, there's no possible world. I mean, even I, in my half-assed gypsy predictions, don't say, in no universe in the multiverse that has 10 billion paths, is there one that could lead to Trump's success or Trump?
Yeah, especially, I'm sorry to interrupt.
But it's as though they are competing to be definitive about their mistakes. And the winners I mean, it really does make you think of a sort of a command economy under communism or something.
Well, yeah.
The winners are the most wrong. They go on to the next round.
Well, this has been going on since Iraq. Like, the more you fucked up that story, the higher you got promoted, right? And they've just and that was where they began suppressing people who were correct. And that cycle has only continued. I mean, they've just continually elevated people who are wrong, and the more aggressively wrong you are, the more they love you on TV.
But even according to the Peter principle, people rise to their level of incompetence, but these people have rocketed past their level of incompetence. They get to their level of incompetence, and that's the beginning of their next promotion.
Right.
So it really is mysterious, and yet they continually come up with these theories about, oh, we discussed gender improperly, or we forgot how traditional Latino males are, or so on. But nobody says, we've got a system where we advance to the next round, the loser, and then we keep losing. Yeah. Maybe that had something to do with it.
Yeah, maybe it has something to do with the fact that we make mistake after mistake, never correct them, and reward the wrongest people, with promotions and here as someone says, Russiagate Pulitzers. Yeah, maybe that would have something to do with it. Who knows? Okay, I wanted to bring this up. This is the site Lawfare.
Mm-hmm.
And just to remind everybody, like, with the various sort of stages we went through with this election. So this is November of last year, and right around the time that Highland was saying that there was no possible way that he could win the popular vote, and they were so stoked about the coming Section 3 Trump disqualification challenges, that, all those lawsuits that were going to get him disqualified from the ballot. And you can see this is the first of many graphs that they would end up doing. And because they hoped eventually, to have Trump basically disqualified from the ballot everywhere. And this is basically what the map looked like before the Supreme Court's like, yeah, no, never mind. And so they were putting all their eggs into this disqualification basket, and that became just another thing that turned out not to mean anything.
Well, could it be also that dreaming up 50 ways to beat Donald Trump without actually winning an election was a diversion of their energies?
Yeah, that sounds radical to me, Walter. I don't know.
When an election is coming up, perhaps you should devote all of your dynamism to winning it, rather than fantasizing about esoteric legal ways in which you can nullify it or do whatever. And yet they have been absolutely sucking on their ninny bottle, as we used to say. This judge, that judge, and I think some of them still are, frankly. I've seen some evidence that they think there is, some rabbit hole they haven't gone down yet.
Oh no, there is one. It's exactly the same part of the Constitution. This is the whole Jamie Raskin thing where the Congress can decide not to certify.
Well, they don't have Congress, but I guess they still have the Congress before they're seated, before the new one is seated. So they have the Senate at least.
Yes, exactly. And I don't know how exactly that would work, but I think Jamie Raskin was I forget exactly what his thinking was there, but there is a way they can prevent this from happening on that theoretically on that justification of
right.
So but that whole thing kind of fell apart. This took up a lot of energy. That whole like, will Trump be on the ballot? Remember, because they were simultaneously trying to keep no labels off the ballot and RFK off the ballot, and Seth Moulton and Marianne Williamson. There were just a million people they were trying to keep off the ballot, and they really thought they had momentum toward keeping Trump off the ballot. Then the Supreme Court didn't do it, and everybody flipped the fuck out because that didn't happen, and what traitors they are, and we need to reform the Supreme Court. So they moved on to this whole idea of, let's get behind Biden, and we're going to have to actually run for this election and win it. And everybody was like, yeah, he's fine, he's going to do it. This stuff is pretty funny. I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
But I don't think 2016 has anything on 2024 as a display of mass psychosis and denial.
No.
That was just a little edging out of Hillary in Wisconsin that flipped that baby. Here, even in Michigan, where RFK wanted to be removed from the ballot and wasn't, he got 2% of the vote. So Trump still won while giving 2% to RFK there.
Yeah, no, 2016 was, Trump kind of snuck through. I mean, he didn't sneak through. He won the election, and the psychosis was somewhat limited to just sitting on some inconvenient poll numbers. They really thought they were going to win this thing in a landslide, and it just didn't materialize. They didn't start getting really truly like crazy until the Russia thing cranked up.
Right.
And then they went back to some semblance of seeming like normal people when they recaptured the White House. And then especially after the midterms in 2022, but then everything that's happened since then has been like one long, I don't know, descent into what's the novel I'm thinking of, Walter, where somebody just sort of slowly goes crazy. I don't know. Maybe it's Diary of a Madman, something like that.
Well, it reminds me of the story that we did on the Friday edition of America This Week called Christmas All the Time, about the mad woman in Germany who, after World War II, just keeps wanting to have Christmas Day every single day. And the whole family has to adjust to this and sort of keep up this masquerade and give presents and so on. And that's kind of what this has been. It's, victory all the time. They won once and they never got over it. I was looking today at a New Yorker cover from August.
Okay. Let's show that one before we get to this. Okay. Cause that is quite something. Hang on a second. Tell us about the cover while I dig it up.
Well, it's, I forget the illustrator, but it's a kind of regular illustrator for New Yorker covers, and he shows a roller coaster in which Tim Waltz and Harris are just soaring to the top. Look at them. While Trump and Vance go sinking to the bottom, looking up with envy. But the New Yorker, supposedly a literate magazine, doesn't realize that the reason you go to the top in a roller coaster is so that you have a precipitous fall, right?
Yes.
Roller coasters have that word in them, roller, okay? So never has it been truer that what goes up comes down than with a roller coaster, but they seem to forget that essential fact about our favorite ride.
I'm so embarrassed that I didn't notice that, but that is absolutely true. Like, how could you draw that entire picture and forget that what you're drawing?
I almost think that their defense is going to be, see, we showed her about to fall.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's it's all a question of relativity, right? What moment in time are we looking at? But that was August, and a lot of weird stuff happened, especially in July and August of this year. But before we got there, we had these kind of gentle conversations about how Biden was going to do just fine. And here we have, I'm just going to put this on. This is Fareed Zakaria talking with Michael Douglas. And they're having a sort of reassuring conversation about how, he's just fine.
And we are back with Michael Douglas talking about his new series, Franklin, on Apple TV+. Let's talk about age. You're about President Biden's age.
That's what they have in common.
Why don't you run for president?
I did the movie once, but I knew.
Did it ever tempt you?
Well, I knew I had the ending. It's a little difference when you have the ending. They asked me to run for governor a couple of times in California earlier time. And I remember saying, well, why do you want me? He said, well, we need a man who can finance his own campaign. I said, yeah, who has a credibility, notoriety, who is well known around everything. And I remember saying, you sure you're not looking for a kamikaze pilot? I said, I don't think so.
So you and Biden are about the same age. What do you think? Are you one of those people who wished he had bowed out, let the field choose somebody else? How do you think about that?
Well, I think that I walk a little similar to him, and the people that I've talked to and everybody that I have say he's as sharp as a tack. He's fine. We all have an issue with memories. As we get older, we forget names.
Right, sure.
He's overcome a stutter in his life, and sometimes he might. But let's just say that his entire cabinet, including his vice president, everybody in his cabinet, would be more than happy to work with him again in the next term. I cannot say that about the other candidate running because.
Okay, so there's that,
and there's another episode of Tales from the Crypt. Matt, I'm sitting writing a screenplay as we speak, and I won't disclose its subject, but it's a satire, and I don't think I could do any better than to have an interview with an old movie star about politics and say, the basis for your expertise here is that you're about the same age as the president. So, I mean, this is beyond satire, and it really, now that we look into their universe, having having the retrospective knowledge that they were all completely out to lunch, you wonder what they were doing. What were they doing? Why was Michael Douglas even on Fareed Zakaria? Why was he an expert on age? Why is losing your memory just kind of a detail in the cognitive progress of mankind? I mean, you lose your memory and you kind of lose your mind. But in this case, it's just something that happens.
Yeah, it's like a minor setback.
It is literally like watching conversations on the Titanic,
well, they didn't. Sorry, they didn't. The one thing I can say in their defense is they didn't know exactly what lay ahead at this moment, but they were supremely confident that it was going to be fine because it had worked out before.
But Matt, why did I know? Because I challenge anyone who has watched this show regularly to find any moment at which I thought, whoa, the Harris juggernaut is unstoppable. In fact, every time they peaked, supposedly the debate, the convention, and so on, I shook my head. And the fact was, I had sources the whole time telling me what the real story was. And I'm a guy living in Montana. Okay. I would think that Fareed there at headquarters,
they had to know as well, right?
They had to know. They had to know.
Yeah.
It's an entertainment
they
product,
had to know.
and it's a poor entertainment product, and it milks the audience for its dollars and its attention by not telling them the truth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, at this stage of the campaign, they still had one of their main sort of aces in the hole, which was Trump's criminal trial. And
right.
When he got convicted, everybody was sure that that was the end. I am not going to play this whole thing because we've done too much of this guy already recently. But this is Jimmy Kimmel after that on the night after the guilty verdict.
Los Angeles, California, where I don't know about you, but we are still buzzing from the recreational cannabis and also from the verdict that was handed down so bigly and beautifully in New York City yesterday. Our one-time commander and thief scored the most guilty verdicts of any president ever. He went 34-0, topping the 1971-72 Lakers, who won 33 in a row. And Trump did it without Will Chamberlain or Jerry Rentz. He did it all by himself. It was a day that will be written about in history books. For those of you watching in Florida, history books are things you used to have at your schools.
It's amazing. He made it like 2 whole minutes without finding a way to insult somebody, some major demographic.
And they moved seamlessly from exulting in Trump's conviction or whatever it was to saying that he might put his opponents in jail. I mean, they move seamlessly. Not only are they okay, let's count down the score. Not only are they wrong in terms of the data, not only are they deceptive in terms of the trends, but they are absolutely hypocritical and contradictory in all of their statements about what Trump might do compared to what has already manifestly been done, and which they are applauding right there. I don't know that you get that many sort of facets of denial in one mindset. Right now they're saying things like, oh, Sotomayor should maybe step down so Harris can take her place on the Supreme Court. Or I've seen also Biden should step aside so Harris can be the first female president. What? When you are trounced and you lose both houses of Congress, your participation trophy is you get to be president for a few weeks. Or
I think that's extraordinarily insulting to women. Also, it's like saying we don't think a woman can win, so we're gonna do it this way so that at least it happens.
Also, Sotomayor. I mean, she must be going. Never trust these people. I was the toast of the town. Talk about being a foreign country that's deserted by the U.S. once we convince you to go to war. They exalt you to the Supreme Court and then tell you, hey, old lady, step aside.
Yeah, your presence is currently inconvenient to us, so we would like you to move aside just in time for the inauguration, so we can. But no, there have been many different panicked reactions in the last couple of days. I'm sure we're going to see more, and I'm a little bit worried that they're going to be of a more serious character than some of these knee-jerk things that we've seen in the last couple of days.
Well, they're talking themselves into complete rejection of the country as a legitimate entity. We gave the voters a chance to see it our way. They didn't, and that was their last chance. We're now going to take control of the wheel.
Well, I think you put this up, right? The thing that Lee posted, Lee did the story on, where they blamed everything on the consultants lashed out on the. Hang on a sec. Let me just show this headline. It's just so classic. But basically, the whole idea is that it's just we have bad voters, you know.
Right.
Consultants lash out at voters as racist and sexist. Some Democratic consultants working on the presidential race are not in the mood for introspection. And you know, it's a good Lee story, but I think they're all coming to that conclusion, which is just basically that, you know, voters are bad.
And that, you know, and most of America, a majority of America already knew that they were disapproved of, deplored, thought to be garbage. But here they are reiterating it just in case you thought they were doing that in the heat of the campaign. No, they really do dislike you. And they weren't just saying it. Now they've apparently feel they have proof of your, you know, your perfidy and your inadequacy. And what are they going to do? They still have, you know, a last little bit of power. What's the punishment going to be?
So I saw one of these videos showed, actually it was Michael Cohen of all people, saying we can't go to Canada because he's going to take over Canada. So
and he's going to buy Greenland.
He's going to buy Greenland. So yeah, so it's absolutely nuts. And just to by the way, I checked today. Rob Reiner has been kind of silent since election night. He's usually quite a prolific tweeter. Nothing since election night, and so I was moved to go back and look at some of his greatest hits over the summer, and one sequence really stands out as kind of a funny window into the whole situation. So here, this is right after the debate between Trump and Biden. And here's Reiner saying, last night's debate was a disaster for President Biden, but the choice is still crystal clear. We can either choose a good, decent man who cares about his fellow citizens and knows how to govern, or a convicted felon who will destroy our democracy. Not a tough choice, right? But just a couple of days later, he decided on a different strategy. Hang on a second. Here we go. If we see the, I'm sorry, wait, this is the wrong one. I apologize. It's time to stop fucking around. If the convicted felon wins, we lose our democracy. Joe Biden has effectively served us with honor, decency, and dignity. It's time for Joe Biden to step down. But then he went on Morning Joe the next day. And if we see the Joe Biden that appeared on Morning Joe today, every day until November 5th, he'll be able to shut up people like me who think he should step aside.
Wait, he has all the resolve of Nate Silver with. So here's what I think is interesting at the moment. You're seeing a rare instance of message chaos on the part of the left, okay, on the part of the Democrats. They have obviously not gotten their standing orders yet post-election as to how they're to interpret it and what they're to say. So CNN is having these sort of like kindergarten-like circles or these group therapy sessions, if you've been watching CNN.
Oh my God, they're amazing.
Yeah, where they're sitting in a circle and they're all, you know, falling back and forth between, you know, blaming people for being bigots and self-criticism. But in general, across the media, they have not yet gotten a memo. It's clearly, it's clear. So they're freestyling it. They're winging it. And you can just see them waiting. When are they going to tell us what to say? When are they going to give us our sheet music again? We can't hold out much longer. It's like comedians during TV comedians during the writers' strike. You realize they weren't funny,
Right.
because and this is like they're getting a memo strike. It hasn't yet been firmed up, so they're biding their time. But I suspect that by maybe the end of this week, you're going to see message discipline return, and we're going to get common lines.
Yeah, and they really did have memos. Let me see if I can find the good one. The DNC was sending out, as we've talked about in the show before, these talking points gigs, mailers in through email, and that's why you heard people like Michael Douglas use expressions like "sharp as a tack," which everybody else was using, because basically these would appear in these sort of political. Oh, you're vaping.
Yeah. How did I do? An hour, exactly 1 hour.
I think that's
yeah.
fine. Yeah. So look, this is the Democratic, the DNC, and their November 1st release. And let's see, on Sunday this is before the Madison Square Garden rally. On Sunday, ahead of Trump's New York rally, the DNC projected several messages onto its rally venue, exposing his dangerous behavior and praise for authoritarian leaders like Hitler. These projections are part of the DNC's final push to remind voters of the dangers of an unhinged and unchecked Trump presidency spearheaded by his extreme Project 2025 agenda. And then they show all the places where they got quoted, where their the DNC messaging got quoted in major media. And so it's not like this is metaphorical. This is, I'm sorry, did I not put this on? Here we go. You can see here they actually show all the different outlets where the message got circulated and where they quoted the DNC officials talking about the Hitler comparison. So this is not like a fictional thing. They actually did have these memos throughout the entire campaign, but they don't have them now. There's nothing to say except to complain about things that the president-elect is saying. So it's you're right. It's messaging chaos, which is a rare situation.
And I have a prediction as to how they're going to flock back up and around what talking points. They are going to, I think, say that the new media ecosystem is, by definition, polluted and unreliable. So, so X is really going to get it. The podcasts and the whole, constellation of secondary phenomena will get it. You're going to start to get some kind of high conceptual talk about how our cognitive structure is off. It's going to be very academic. America has lost its mind, and they're going to show us in some pseudo intellectual way. They're going to give us a map of just how insane we've become. The second track is going to be to interpret every one of Trump's predictions as to what he's going to do as a reprise of classic authoritarianism.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on the one hand, they're going to diagnose us as irredeemably mad due to this crazy nervous system, this informational nervous system that we've installed. And number two, you're going to see just side-by-side comparisons of every one of these Trump videos in which he says what he's going to do on day one with some authoritarian precedent.
Right.
But I don't see anywhere else to go. They can't keep blaming their own constituency. That's self-destructive and short-term thinking.
Well, see, but I thought that they would by now have already. Well, you saw in the Atlantic we need to have a real conversation about gender, gender
Right.
language. I think there's going to be a little bit more of that. And you saw Maureen Dowd and having an interview with Rahm Emanuel where, Rahm says, when the woke police come, they don't even read your Miranda rights. Like, where was that for the last 8 years? They just decided to keep that on the shelf. But yeah, there's going to be a little bit of, I guess we're going to have to start trying to talk to voters again. But the problem is they just don't like them.
They're going to tell us that it's not our fault. We've experienced a collective hallucination installed by the algorithms, and they're going to say that a mass psychosis took hold, and they'll use very arcane readings of how information circulates, and then on the other hand, it will be countdown to Hitler. Yet again, Trump has made a statement similar to those that Perón, Mussolini, and Hitler did at this point in their rise.
Yeah.
They have to commit to those metaphors because, as I say, the blame game that involves castigating their own constituency has to end. They're going to have to let people off the hook. It's not your fault. Elon Musk drove you crazy. This mass hypnosis is irresistible, and we need to break its spell.
You're going to make me find the "It's Not Your Fault" clip from Good Will Hunting, but I think everybody's seen it, so I don't have to do it. But
I don't even remember it. I don't remember.
You don't remember it? I'll find it. I'll find it in a minute. But you mentioned this idea that they're going to have to talk about the kind of hopeless demographics and the polluted ecosystem. And I think you might have tweeted this one out, but there was kind of an amazing one if you dug back and looked between Katie Tour and a Democratic Party pollster named Cornell Belcher. Well, let's just watch it. Hang on a second. Here we go.
What does all this disinformation do in a moment like this when we are
this is before the election,
less than a month away from an election?
If you look at some voters that we call low information, which I really don't like to call them low information, but voters who are just not paying a great deal of attention to us on mainstream television or mainstream cable news, and they're getting most of their information from social media sites that aren't filtered. I do worry that they don't turn out or vote, or that they vote in a way that is just misinformed. So we'll see on election day, but this level of misinformation, I've been around a long time. I've not seen anything quite like it.
It's a disease in our system. I mean, I deal with this with my kids who send me, things they see on YouTube. Look at this thing. Oh my God. And I have to say, who is this person? Why do you trust them? Where did this information come from? How'd you verify this claim? It's like that basic level of media literacy that, you expect to teach a teenager, but you expect that when you get into your 20s, 30s, and 40s and beyond, that you have a basic understanding of it. But in reality, in this day and age, a lot of that has been forgotten, or at least there's been so much doubt sewn into it that people no longer trust the NBC Newses, the MSNBCs, et cetera, of the world. Instead, they trust a person that they see on their social media feed.
But
I just can't. Go ahead.
Okay, so we saw the disease metaphor, and that's
my kids.
And that's my prediction, that America is sick. America has fallen prey to a pandemic of misinformation and so on. And because really, Matt, look at it. Their only hope of regaining power is to gain control of this media sphere. That's their only hope. They know that is the power that dislodged them. And so they have to go head on at their real enemy. And only if they can dismantle that or sow enough doubt in it do they have a hope. Because as we speak, people have gotten more courageous. This really is Munchkin land that we're living in on Monday, 1 week after the election. People who were on the fence or hiding their preferences or, shy about supporting Trump have come out and gone, da 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 da, and they are dancing all over the place, and they have suddenly
Ding dong, the DNC's dead.
Exactly. I mean, if Twitter was sort of an asset for Trump before, it's become twice as much an asset now that people aren't scared, and people need to have the fear put back in them, and that's going to be their thrust. I know it. The AOC was just a little glimmer of where it's going, but there are going to be mass gang ups on wrongthink. They're going to use these last couple of months to make an all-out offensive against the disease model of communication, and they're going to, and I predict the rise of a new expert, a Fauci-like character who they will all coalesce around, who will tell us exactly what this disease is and become the new, new head nurse.
Right. Yeah. A Fauci for those words we're not going to say anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that because they can't put somebody like Renee up there. It'll have to be somebody that they don't have profound.
Have we seen Hillary since the election? She was getting rather rambunctious right before it.
No, I mean I always imagine Hillary like they keep her in some kind of specialized garage like RoboCop, in a chair where she's fed a rudimentary paste in between media appearances, probably just recharging until they need to put her out again. I don't know. Why would she come out at this point? For what?
Right. I'll finish by saying they need a unified field theory of their loss, and only one theory really qualifies, and that is that America is mentally ill.
But what's so funny about that is that they're mentally ill. I mean, this is a mass formation, event that's gone on for 8 years, and what you're talking about, the reason that people are coming out and they're finally, they're finally not afraid anymore, is that the main thing holding all of this kind of illness together was the fear of social retribution, the kind of terror of being labeled something disreputable. But now, not only it's not even a minority point of view, like this is a popular vote victory, and moreover, it was a popular vote victory that didn't particularly involve the richest people in the country, right? So there's that element to it as well. And once the fear is gone, it becomes 100 times harder to hold this thing together. There's no way to. It's like a cult, right? How do you keep a cult together if people aren't afraid to leave it?
Right? Well, I think in retrospect that I underestimated the sense of liberation that would spread across the country after a potential Trump win. I'm going out on a limb here, but it does feel like some invisible Berlin Wall fell, and people have rushed over to the other zone. And as far as I'm a coach for freedom, I would say that's a good that's a good tactic. You want to get over to the other side so that they don't have any reason or incentive to rebuild the wall. They realize that all the liquid has flowed to the other end, and it's no use, because now looking back, I realized that there was more fear, more self-censorship. We talk endlessly on this show about the censorship that comes from above, but we don't talk about the censorship that comes from within. And I think it was approximately 1,000 times as powerful as
No question.
as anything emanating from the Stanford Internet Observatory.
No question.
Yeah. And to turn that feeling back is pretty damned hard, you know.
Yeah, there's no way to, you can't reimpose terror after you've been toppled. Like, and you know, the spell of this thing, the social opprobrium that they kept intact even when they lost the White House, and that was like a crucial part of the whole thing, is that there was never a moment where it was acceptable to say Donald Trump's just the president. Maybe he's a shitty president, but he's the president. You couldn't say that. He was this illegitimate something, you know, Russian agent, criminal, imposter occupying the White House, and anything less than that was normalizing, right? And so, yeah.
Before the election, we had no feedback mechanism by which to know the true state of American opinion. I mean, they fudged it right up until the moment with their of going to the polls with their polls. So there was really only a sense that maybe there was a lot of support that was hidden, but the silent majority was silent, and the media spoke over it. Now that we have had at least one mirror moment in which we can see the composition of the American electorate, it's striking, because they did everything they could to interrupt any feedback loop which would show you the country as we now know it to be.
And given how strong the pressure was to not give in and show yourself your true thoughts, the fact that the result was as decisive as it was is kind of incredible, right?
But I think a lot of Americans knew in their gut this might be their last chance.
Right. Exactly. I felt that way.
Yeah, I did too. I said on this show many times, I don't endorse candidates for president, but I woke up on election day and I was on the rowing machine at the gym, and I said, I'm going to endorse, because if this doesn't go the right way, you might not hear from me again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I legitimately worried that, you know, because I didn't vote last time. And that was, you know, partly that was just me thinking, look, at least I'm not voting for them. Right.
Right.
But there was so much to be scared of. And, you know, the part of it for me was seeing the Center for Countering Digital Hate memos talking about how, yeah, we've got Australia, Canada, the UK, like New Zealand, and, you know, all these other countries. And, you know, now the only thing we're missing is the US or whatever it is. And yeah, that was another trip to Puckerville. Like, look, it's true. The lockdown is almost complete everywhere else, and it's still not out of the picture that could happen. I mean, you know, I don't think Trump will ever go for it, but there's some mechanism by which that could still pass. I have no idea. You know,
we saw JD Vance today telling NATO that you had better become more committed to free societies if you want our continued linchpin support. You know, and I gotta say, it was getting a little weird that all of our allies had ditched this freedom of speech thing for their, you know, bureaucratic control mechanisms. We were holding on to it just barely. and yet we're paying their bills. I mean, we used to invade countries for doing what our allies do now.
We used to invade them just because we were bored.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah.
I mean, like, you know, for the kind of stuff that they've been doing, and forget the Elon Musk episode, like with, you know, England and his dispute with them. This whole thing about like, oh, we're going to arrest Pavel Durov. We're going to pass all these laws that are going to force American companies to submit to European censors. Like, what? We put up with that? Like, I thought we were the, you know, the big dog in that universe, and the fact that we did put up with it, it was one of the things that I thought about. Like, that means we're okay with it. We're completely okay with it, and you know,
we may even be sponsoring it there,
right,
in the hope that it will encircle us and we will then, you know, be the last domino to fall on purpose. But I'm going to use this moment to elucidate a theory that I think I articulated poorly on Twitter. And this is going into the science fiction realm. When I thought about this election afterwards and the stakes, I was reading, while I was thinking about it, I read a Mark Andreessen post in which he said the effort to install woke principles in the AIs is now dead. And I thought, okay, what if this whole election, going back years, if this whole sort of battle that we've been going through culturally, you know, not just in this last 4 years, but maybe for 12, was all waged in anticipation of the fact that AI was about to take off, and that whoever was in power around 2024, when they projected the thing would, you know, go nuclear, was going to be able to install their power sort of permanently in the meta brain of the West. And maybe that's what scared these Elon Musks and other tech people, because they saw, in a way that we can't, that this calendar of AI advances was leading to a point at which whoever has the hill in 2024 is going to be able to program the future into a machine, so to speak. And that may have been the unknown prize. I'm asking people to consider that, because the real remarkable change that happened this year was that a certain segment of tech broke rank, and they broke rank spectacularly and ran to Trump. And I think it was over this, the thought that whichever party is in charge at this point will have perhaps the prerogative to program the future.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, maybe it's a little bit like the movie Highlander, where there's like an ultimate prize at the end, you know, that we don't know about, that only a handful of participants knew what the deal was. But look, Walter, it's abundantly clear that the digital world is set up in such a way that they're going to be able to sort of mass guide attitudes at a scale that I think Americans have, nobody in the world has any conception of how extraordinary it's going to be. I mean, just even think about things that go on with Google Docs and Microsoft Word now, and how it prompts you to certain words and away from others, and that, coupled with the social pressure of constantly looking over your shoulder about word use, you know, because I wondered this whole time, like, what's with all these goofy ideas that don't seem to be politically saleable?
Right.
Well, one utility that they have is that it'll become incredibly easy to identify people who are not on board and are not obeyers.
Right.
And you know, you'll be able to see it 1,000 times a day in all the choices that they make, which are increasingly all online. I mean, it's so weird. You can't buy a snack with dollars on an airplane. Everything has to be done through some app that you got to register. All your behavioral cues are recorded. There's surveillance at a level that's just extraordinary. And you couple that with all the different messaging cues. Yeah. I mean, maybe that is the prize, right?
And so it's as though people knew, using Moore's law and other tools of projection about the future and advances of computing, that around 2024 they're going to make 50,000 copies of the society, and those 50,000 copies of the society are going to determine largely what happens going forward. Whoever is in position at that moment is going to harvest the leverage that comes with that. And I think a lot of people said, if it's a non-meritocratic, quote, woke, DEI style AI, which is, installing all of these demographic and racial and gender ideas into the future, we might never get out from under it. And I think the battle was over time, just as armies usually fight geographically. They move across space to get the oil resources. I think people in the past looked forward into time, saw that there was going to be this kind of pivotal moment, and have been fighting over who will be on top when it occurs.
It makes total sense. I think a lot of people, and this is why there's a mistake, I think, that a lot of people make when the analysis is going to be, oh, this country's so inherently backward racially or whatever it is, or there's a cult of personality with Trump. Yeah, I don't think so. I think Trump, certainly helped his cause with this election in a lot of ways. And part of it was just by being so plainly not this kind of character, from this world. He's sort of uniquely old-fashioned human, right? But more than that, I think there were a lot of people who were just voting against this new kind of control mechanism that they sensed was coming. And Trump is a representation of they were almost voting for the contagion that this thing is trying to wipe out. I think it's striking that the people who survived in the last 8 years, the various attempts at ruination, were people who were so extraordinarily successful in the market that they couldn't be dispensed with. So whether it's Rogan with his 10 gazillion followers, or Trump with his 70 million voters, or Chappelle, right, being the top comic in the country, those were the only people who really who didn't. I mean, even J.K. Rowling was crippled during this time period, and she sold more books than all the authors in the earth combined. I think that freaks people out, doesn't it?
Yeah. And one thing I've noticed since the election is an outbreak of wicked pre-COVID style humor. I mean, people may be shocked by it, but because it's a return of what we've repressed so thoroughly. But I'm seeing really out there, offensive Lenny Bruce style, Richard Pryor style humor suddenly flood the internets.
Good. That's what the internet's for. My God, I used to that was the thing that made the internet fun. I mean, I can almost trace the exact moment when the internet stopped being fun. I remember during the campaign in 2016, because I spent a lot of time on the road, and remember that whole thing with Ben Carson and the pyramids, and he thought they were like grain storage facilities for aliens or something like that. And there was a video of him in a dashiki talking about it. It was awesome. It was like a hilarious thing. And everybody on there were no bots back then. It was just real human beings on Twitter being funny about that, right? And then, like, I don't know, a month later or so, the Clinton the Clinton versus Sanders race got tight, and suddenly there were 1 million people on the internet who were fake and threatening, and it just, it feels like since that moment, it's all been nerve-wracking. That kind of free spirit thing has been gone. So if it's back, thank God. You know?
And permission to be kooky has returned to the land. And I want our audience to know, because I speak about it so rarely, that we're about to have a big UFO hearing in Congress. It's either tomorrow or the next day, at which an admiral will appear, one of the highest ranking witnesses or advocates for the notion that there are big secrets about alien life. So if Trump was the pro UFO candidate, because I have my ears tuned to that frequency and I know some people who are involved in that world, Trump and Vance mentioned UFOs numerous times in the campaign. He talked about Area 51 on the Greg Gutfeld show. He talked about UFOs on Rogan, remember? Vance made a few comments. I think they've got a real, I think they've got a dancer that's going to jump out of the cake with the UFO stuff. Mark my words. I actually know that that's going to happen.
Oh, Walter, that's awesome. You're teasing us, but that's great. I love it.
No, it's true. You're going to have this Admiral Gallaudet either tomorrow or Wednesday. All the UFO people have lined up. They saw Trump early on as their advocate because he seemed to be the guy who was willing to disclose classified material in a way the others weren't. And, we could have some fun.
That would be fantastic. And especially this administration is they're gonna release a lot of stuff that the government has hidden. Far more than whatever Trump thought about doing in his last term. He didn't have the juice to do it.
Well, one thing that he revealed on Rogan, and I don't think you go on Rogan unless you have some JFK or UFO stuff to bring to the table. Why even go?
Or an elk.
Or an elk, yeah. And so he said that they had held back JFK files because of some people who are still alive. And I was like, oh my God, is there a 90-year-old like mafia gunman walking around, who they've been protecting?
I love it.
Who could possibly be alive? This might be one of the most, festive moments for conspiracy theorists in the history of mankind since the Church Committee in the 70s.
And remember what dominated like culture after the Church Committee hearings? It was stuff like In Search Of, right? Where suddenly America was like, wow, maybe that's true. Like maybe there is Sasquatch, and but that's because we were learning that the CIA was trying to kill world leaders with exploding seashells. And so it's hard not to think that all kinds of things could be true. And if they're true to their word, and I've heard certainly from both from the Hill and from people incoming with this administration that they're going to release stuff from a variety of areas. Now, I didn't know about the UFO thing. That's really interesting. But look, this is it's almost like a recapturing of the United States government that, has been overtaken maybe since, I don't know, since Eisenhower was president before. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating.
And one other thought that's occurred to me, is it possible to win the presidency with the adamant and uniform opposition of the intelligence services? Did they go a little soft on Trump, maybe? Was there some lack of solidarity in that community. You know what I mean? We've come to
That's
believe.
a really interesting question. Yeah.
We've come to believe in their omnipotence, which I'm sure is erroneous, but we do have a sense of their large powers, and they played those cards in the last election. But I noticed in small ways that they weren't, maybe because they lacked confidence in the outcome, that they weren't quite lining up the way I would expect them to.
That is interesting. And look, if that's the case, it's smart on their part. The people who, because all the people who lined up with the Brennans and the Haydens of the world, they made jackasses of themselves. It was bad OPSEC to have all these people in public, getting involved in domestic politics and not realizing how unpopular they were. And on the speech front, all those agencies who went out there and let themselves be discovered in numerous ways, and let the country know what they were up to, and then it turns out, when you look back, that they were really bragging about some really stupid things they were doing all the time. I think there's got to be some consternation within the intelligence community about, well, why are we got to get rid of some of the flotsam and jetsam in our agencies who are a little bit too media mad, and get back to doing what we do.
Well, so I have a mental picture of the intelligence agencies and their role in American life. And it comes of reading books about the way they've guided our culture and even our artistic culture back, to World War II. And I don't quite see them as the purely malevolent entities that some do. I see them as somewhat detached people who look at the future of the country, look at upcoming conflicts that they think likely, and who, in their strange sort of private club way, try to prepare us, according to their lights, for victory. And I think they made some wrong. I think they made some wrong bets in the last
20 years.
Yeah, in the last 20 years. And I think that they were sort of captured by certain, certain circles and certain factions. But I got some strange, intuitive gypsy sense that they were relaxing their grip on this thing because they were looking forward to a new set of conflicts in the future, maybe a tilt toward China as enemy rather than Russia, and other things. And so we may never see their hand, but I sensed that their hand was a little gentler on the tiller than it has been in the past.
Well, this is a whole different tangent that we probably don't have time to go down tonight. But look, if you were really in the intelligence services and you were thinking honestly about what problems we have to deal with going forward, the United States has been exposed as a country that it can't really be self-sufficient anymore. We're way too dependent on sort of unfree parts of the world. Well, I mean, how free is the United States? But we're way too dependent on Chinese industrial power. We don't make enough things to take care of ourselves in an emergency. Look what happened with Russia after we shut them off from the world. They amped up their industrial capacity massively, and a major national security weakness became a strength. I think there's a lot of people in the intel community who think like that, who are worried. And to your point about the bad bets, a lot of them, I mean, the few intelligence people with whom I've had real conversations, as you say, they don't come off as bad people. They come off as pragmatists. And I think the ones who made the bad bets were the ones who bet on the real ideologues, the Cheneys of the world, right? And then this group of nuts who came in the Brennan era, and I think they want to make a change. I think that would make sense.
I don't think it's possible. Well, it's not easy without at least their semi-neutrality to have a change of the magnitude that this election has brought. There were a lot of opportunities for real informational crackdown that I don't think were taken.
Right, and Trump would somehow be behind bars, or the Supreme Court would have ruled somehow differently if they really wanted to mess with the election and
Yeah.
guarantee a certain result, but they didn't. I think they let the chips fall, I think, a little bit in this one. So
if there's anything to this, because of this is an unfalsifiable theory, these people operate perforce behind a screen. But if there's anything to it, I think they were wise to let America have its head for once.
Yeah, absolutely, because they were looking at an even angrier revolt going forward. I mean, Martin Gurry's revolt of the public. He was a CIA analyst. He saw this. He saw it coming in 2014, 2013. He saw that the public there was going to be blowback. I'm sure they knew that if this thing was fudged in some way or locked down, that there was going to be a problem.
Because again, and we can only speak about what's happened so far. The great surprise of this whole thing is that there aren't pillars of smoke over American cities right now, that there isn't some civil disturbance like the New Yorker semi-predicted the Monday before the election. You're kind of looking around going, was that all just a sort of extortionate threat? Or was it just a bad projection? Or was it really not in the cards?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was. It was just idiots in the media who are really just the dumbest people in the country, basically, when it comes down to it.
Well, and they live by creating suspense.
That's true.
That's what keeps you watching their big show. But it just didn't happen. I mean, we still haven't quite grappled with the surprise of knowing that night the results.
I know. I was shocked when it actually came in, because remember Fox called Michigan and then Wisconsin in short order, and the other agencies didn't. And I was like, oh God, it's going to be another one of these things. We're going to have to wait for another week to figure this whole thing out. And then next thing you know, they all called, and it was like a surrender. I don't know. I feel like this is a massive paradigm shifting thing. With each passing day, it feels more and more like that to me.
I agree. It was easy to feel that history had ended in some way, that we were headed toward an ever more restrictive, linguistically perverse world of wokedom and so on, in which we were more and more afraid of the authorities. The kind of lockdown mentality would go on forever, but it hasn't. And that makes this one of the most significant moments in my lifetime. I really, having been aware since about I was born in 62, since about 1970, because I was precociously interested in current events, I can't think of anything comparable. Maybe the Reagan victory over Carter, but that was kind of expected, and it wasn't the sea change. I mean, the 70s became the 80s rather slowly. It wasn't until maybe 82 or 83 that you really went, these are the 80s. But this feels like a swivel.
Yeah, it really does. Nothing in my lifetime compares to it. I mean, I was there for a major change in another country, but I was just sort of watching as a detached observer, and I didn't think that was going to spill into the rest of the world. When Putin takes over or whatever in Russia. but I definitely for the last 4 or 5 years have felt like we were steaming towards either civil war or, something dystopian. And I'm still kind of shocked that we're averting that end.
And I've asked myself over and over, how does one comport oneself when they feel such a change is occurring? Do you hang back and hedge your bets, or do you run toward the world that, at least in my case, you would prefer?
The latter.
Yeah, and I say the latter. You must make it a fait accompli. This is no time for people to wonder when the clampdown is coming back, because by acting as though it's not, you make it much harder.
Yeah. And well, we can get into all of this some other time, but
yeah,
this is my whole thinking during this entire period was I was so terrified of that thing happening, that sort of fail-safe moment that we would go past, and then there would be no going back, right? Like it would be some total futuristic nightmare scenario.
And we get to criticize Trump. We didn't make the hell.
Exactly.
We can make fun of this guy all we want, or we can criticize his policies. We can do it all, but I can do it without fearing blowback, frankly, because the one thing that I never really feared was that Trump was going to resurrect the right-wing version of what we've just been through. I don't think he has the resources. I don't think he has the interest in it, and I don't think he has to do it.
He doesn't have to do it politically. I don't think you can 100% exclude the possibility that they would try something like that, but just out of caution, I would say that. But I don't sense that at all. Which is why for the last however many years, I still get a lot of flack from people saying, how come you never go after these people? Because I don't want to validate any of the bullshit that's coming from this, machine that I'm terrified of, right? But now that that's dead, or it seems to be dead, now everybody's fair game. It feels like to me, and we can pick on Trump, and that might even be funny again. When it's not mandatory, it's funny. And that's what, by the way, somebody asked what MAFA was. Make America funny again, I think is what that person was saying.
Right. And it's not as though Walter is going to relax his vigilance toward power. It's built into me. It's the Eastern European peasant in me, who who sees the army coming and hides and shoots spitballs out of behind the wall. But I feel in a better position to do that than we were. I felt we were skating on pretty damn thin ice recently.
Me too. I had very dark thoughts towards the end of the year and towards the end of this season. And somebody's saying we love you guys so much. I have to say, this show has been a great mood lifter, because it has made me feel, I don't know about you, Walter, it's made me feel less alone and less crazy during this fraught period. So
I knew who I was going to call if the Goon Squad showed up, hey, Matt, I know Signal's been taken down, but can you take a collect call from Montana FEMA camp?
From the Florence, Colorado Supermax. You have a collect call from Walter Kern. Yeah, I'll accept the charges. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm glad. I think all the audience, I'm very grateful to all these folks who turn out, because it was a scary time. Now we get to just pick on people, which is great. So
right, yeah, but it's going to be a lot of fun to return to what I consider political normalcy, and the other side predicts is the Third Reich. But I made my bet. and I had a lot of information on which to make it, and I think that going forward, the people who anticipated goodness, anticipated a little bit more freedom, will be in the best position to critique what happens.
Yep. I mean, the only thing that gives me pause is that the perfect comic ending to this whole thing is that it actually will turn out to be the Third Reich and will be the first people thrown in the camp. But I don't think that's going to happen. So anyway,
nobody's read more Hitler books than me. I mean, no, my dad, a German, had a fascination with Hitler, and I'll tell you what its roots were. His family came from the one part of Germany, Swabia, that did not support Hitler's rise, and which kind of hung back. It's a kind of obscure and poor place of extremely stoic, almost Scotsman-like, hard-boiled people, and and he'd always been proud. He says, your roots are in the one part of Germany that didn't support Nazism, and so he laid on me all these giant books. I mean, I've read 10,000 pages at least. One of the very first books I read was The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich when I was a little kid, and
that is a huge book. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I don't have antenna for this, I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I probably read a commensurate amount of books about the lefty terrors in the Soviet Union, which is another reason I was particularly freaked out in the last couple of years. But anyway, seemingly it's all over now, so we can go back to let's wait to see what happens in the UFO hearings and go back to normal. And thank you everybody for coming to hang out and
notice we didn't inflict Rachel Maddow on you tonight.
We didn't do it.
Was that forgetfulness on your part or mercy to our audience?
A little bit of both. I have her up here on the board, but you know why? We were doing fine.
Yeah.
So everybody have a relaxing evening. You know, go smoke a bone or something, and and we will see you soon.
See you soon.
All right. Take care.